Now I know what you're going to think from the title alone, but my intention here is not to rag on Security Breach. So, instead of waiting until the end to bring up my point, I'm going to bring it up now so that you understand what I'm trying to do. This is not the comparison between FNAF and Bendy. This is the comparison between a game that was too rushed and too uncertain of what it wanted to be and one that got enough time to finish, had clear restraints in place, and ended up turning out better. About a game who's been somewhat consumed by its franchisation and being shoved into a AAA space when it's not ready. And a game series that recovered from earlier problems and came through with a better experience. I do not hate FNAF or Security Breach. I love FNAF, I love Bendy, and I am making these comparisons to better understand and explain where one could recover and how the other one did. So, with that out of the way, let's begin the comparisons. I'm going to start with the presentation and performance before I get onto anything else. Performance-wise, Dark Revival plays better than Security Breach. The loading times aren't as long, there's no stops for many loading sections, it doesn't take up as much CPU, and you can change the graphic quality without resetting the game. Security Breach has this problem where it loads in and doesn't deload maps, so the longer you play it the more gunked up it gets. I heard they tried to fix it, but I don't know if they did. Dark Revival doesn't have this problem even though you can backtrack to earlier levels. I get that Security Breach is supposed to be an open world in comparison to Dark Revival's smaller world, but that does cause issues with performance. Now, I know glitches and bugs count as performance, but I'm going to save those for later for obvious reasons. Now let's discuss the cutscenes. So, Security Breach has 2 Pixar quality cutscenes, a handful of in-game cutscenes, and 4 of its endings are not animated. All of Dark Revival's cutscenes are animated and their quality depends on the set quality you're playing at. While these cutscenes are not the same Pixar grade quality as Security Breach's opening scene, they are better than Security Breach's in-game cutscenes. Animations are more fluid and expressive. And not just the animatronics, I mean comparing Gregory's to Audrey's. There's also a lot more of them. There are plenty of little animations in the game as well. Audrey picking up and examining objects, looking around and acknowledging stuff, throwing levers. These detail cutscenes are largely lacking from Security Breach. In fact, they had to go in after release and patch in more voice lines to explain important events. I'll go further into that during missions. When Gregory and Freddy talk in-game, Freddy typically stands still and opens and closes his mouth. He does not make expressive gestures. The daycare attendant makes expressive gestures in his cutscenes, but not when he's talking to Gregory in the center of the daycare. He's just idling. Gregory also doesn't talk or make any noises at all in this cutscene. All of the cutscenes in Dark Revival have motion and movement and there's a significantly higher amount of detail. Like, let's look at Heidi. Heidi is a side character who makes a brief appearance towards the end of the game. She's a friendly lost one who wants to play a game of hide and seek before she helps you. She has a rocking animation, she has a happy animation, a hiding animation, animates as you're talking to her after you find her, and an animation when she rewards you with fast travel that for some reason Dark Revival has and Security Breach doesn't. In sharp contrast, Vanessa doesn't even have an animation for when she's on the screen talking to Gregory. She just idles, which is extremely weird since she's looking around everywhere but the camera when she's supposed to be talking to it and him. So, yeah, I'd say Dark Revival wins. Because even though Security Breach's opening and closing cutscenes are a really good quality, and I'm not going to underplay that, Dark Revival's consistency wins out. Because you don't need as much flashiness if the characters just moved a little more. It's not like you would be penalized if the characters moved robotically either, since they're robots. Things like Gregory looking around when he sets off the security protocols in the office mission along with a glimpse of someone coming in would have done so much to help the general feel of the game. Now let's move on to the gameplay. Though before I do, it should be noted that Dark Revival has 3 difficulty settings while Security Breach does not. The difficulty settings help adjust your gameplay experience. Security Breach is a bit too easy once you've played through it once, and why that is I'll get into later. And I know difficulty is subjective, but that's what makes that choice so important. One of the things Security Breach got notable flack for was its attempts to increase difficulty in the later game by erasing the ability to save. This was a horrible decision. Not just because of the bugs on launch, but because this meant that someone would not be able to quit without losing all of their progress for a large section of time. With the only amenity being an autosave before the final boss. Which I can't remember if it was patched in or not. They took this out in later patches, but this is something worth bringing up, because it was a really stupid decision. And since we're on saving, Dark Revival lets you save anywhere and routinely auto-saves as well. I don't tend to mind save stations, but I think that saving anywhere is a perfectly fine system. If your difficulty has to rely on you making saving sparse, then there is a problem with your difficulty. Because saving doesn't make a game easier, it just cuts down on the backtracking you have to do. Now let's go on to gameplay proper. While these seem like vastly different games, they actually aren't. Both have stealth mechanics, both have missions where you collect objects and go to locations. Since Bendy has combat and Security Breach doesn't, I won't compare that aspect. Dark Revival's stealth is largely optional while Security Breach's is semi-optional and intended. By which I mean, there's only really a few required stealth sections in Dark Revival while Security Breach is a stealth game that you can cheese if you run by real fast. To be fair though, you can effectively outrun threats in both games. However, the results of outrunning are different. Dark Revival's spaces are a little more claustrophobic, so you can outrun threats and hide in a hiding spot, but you might also get yourself cornered. You might also have an enemy hiding in a hiding spot, which you can hear from outside it. I've only found this happening in the lockers and not on every level. Security Breach's large rooms means you can usually lose an animatronic pretty quickly if you outrun them. Unless you flag a staff bot and an animatronic spawns closer. Both have a stamina system as well that you can upgrade. Now, Dark Revival's upgrade system involves finding these tubes of thick ink and, upon finding them, you can upgrade either your stamina, health, or ability. Security Breach's upgrades are just for stamina, as there isn't a health system. While I prefer Dark Revival's choice in upgrades, Security Breach's upgrades are relatively fine. My only problem being that you can just walk past them. Like, here's an example. In Dark Revival there are hidden thick ink tubes, but you do pass a few of them automatically. So, you won't get a lot of upgrades if you don't explore, but you will at least get some. In Security Breach, all of the upgrades are hidden, and some are even locked behind specific routes unless you go to the other route at the end of the game. Even then, it's easy to walk past them, and the game doesn't outright tell you even that they exist. Which is a problem, because Security Breach's starting stamina is pretty low. For example, you can get a stamina upgrade in the loading dock mission. When you fall down the vent, there's 2 directions. If you go through one of the doors you will find a stamina upgrade, the other you won't. Going through the one door immediately spawns in Chica in the next room. You are likely not going to turn around and check the other pathway after that. Especially not when there's so many dead-end locations, like bathrooms, and that hallway section towards the beginning of the game. And I do agree you should be rewarded for exploration, but I feel like there should be an amenity in situations like this. Or, here's another and better example. There is a secret flashlight upgrade in the daycare. One that you can easily miss hidden in one of the non-essential towers underneath the balcony. If you leave the daycare without it, which you likely will because most of the daycare is empty and you wouldn't know it would be there, you cannot return to the daycare to get it. You are banned from the daycare and you can't get the upgrade. Which wouldn't be nearly as big of a deal if it wasn't for the fact that this actually bars you from getting the prize box achievement. In contrast, there are doors and hiding spaces in Dark Revival that you cannot open or reach until later, so you are encouraged to return and check them out later. I'm not saying that backtracking is the better system. But I am saying that you shouldn't bar a location when there's an otherwise impossible to get upgrade inside unless you put it a little more out into the open. And this might seem like a nitpick, but this reflects a lot of the mission items as well. I'm going to stop here for now. On the next video we will be discussing enemy variety, boss battles, and more gameplay differences, so please stick around for that. Thank you for watching.